Coming in at number 10, we have Kamala Khan, aka the latest and greatest Ms. Marvel. Originally just an Avengers fangirl growing up with her parents in Jersey City, Kamala Khan's life was changed forever when the Terrigen Mists incident took place and activated her hidden inhuman powers. Kamala was amazed to discover she was actually a polymorph and was capable of completely altering the size of her body. Inspired by her lifelong hero, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Kamala Khan became the next generation's Ms. Marvel, using her powers as a member of the Young Avengers and becoming the type of hero she'd always dreamed of becoming. Coming in at number 9, we have the iconic vampire killer known as Blade. Born as a human-vampire hybrid named Eric Brooks, Blade has all of the powers of a Marvel Universe vampire with nearly none of the negative side effects. He possesses superhuman strength and speed, with all of his senses heightened to make him a perfect predator, while being immune to damage from sunlight, silver, or holy artifacts that would instantly turn a regular vampire powerless. While he does still need the nutrients from fresh human blood to prevent himself from losing control of his hunger, Blade often uses a special serum as opposed to actually draining the blood of any humans. With so many strengths and so little weaknesses, Blade is definitely a blood-sucking force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 8, we have the crazed character known as Gwenpool. One of the weirder characters from throughout the Marvel multiverse, Gwendolyn Poole is originally from an alternate reality that just might be our own before somehow getting sucked into the Marvel 616 universe through a comic book, granting her even more fourth wall breaking powers than even her namesake of Deadpool. With the ability to manipulate all aspects of her comic book world, such as physically interacting with lettering and caption boxes, Gwenpool is capable of literally rewriting reality to get the upper hand on her opponents, making her powers some of the most unusual throughout all of Marvel history, but still counting as some of the most powerful to ever come from a teen hero. Coming in at number 7, we have Vulcan, the secret third brother of Scott and Alex Summers, also known as Gabriel Summers. Born on the Shi'ar throne world following his parents' abduction by the Shi'ar Empire, Gabriel was aged rapidly in an incubation accelerator, and discovered he was an Omega-level mutant far above his brother's power back on Earth, giving him the unique ability to control the elements of water, wind, earth, fire, electricity, light, and darkness, using these incredible powers to take over the Shi'ar Empire and become their new emperor. And while this position of power would occasionally bring him into conflict with the X-Men, he still could generally be counted upon to fight for the side of good with his incredibly impressive power set. Coming in at number 6, we have the upcoming Disney Plus star, Moon Knight. A street-level Marvel hero with powers that go far beyond the usual street, Mark Spector is a vessel for an Egyptian god known as Khonshu. Able to embrace the 4 different aspects of this deity as 4 distinct personalities within his own head, Moon Knight is strongest under the light of a full moon, giving him physical strength far beyond that of a normal man, and a pain tolerance that is nearly limitless. On top of his supernatural abilities, Mark is also an expert in both weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, combining them with his moon-based powers into a deadly combination that makes him one of the ultimate crime fighters and mercenaries in the entire Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. One of the original members of the Fantastic Four, Ben Grimm found his entire body converted into an orange rock-like substance after being bombarded with cosmic rays alongside the rest of the Fantastic Four during their initial fated journey into space. Because of this transformation, Ben has become the physically strongest member of the team by far, and appears to be continuing to get stronger with age, capable of lifting 30,000 tons worth of a building to prevent it from collapsing, and even being able to push back entire alien motherships. He might often get overlooked compared to some of the other brawny Marvel heroes like Thor and the Hulk, but the Thing is definitely a strong contender whenever it counts. Coming in at number 4, we have the Sorcerer Supreme, aka Dr. Steven Stephen Strange. Doctor Strange is Earth's primary defender against mystical threats in the Marvel Universe, and always seems to have some sort of spell available to solve whatever problem is currently facing Earth's mightiest heroes. As a master of the mystic arts, Strange has also entirely stopped aging, and is effectively immortal, being unable to die from any medical diseases or regular symptoms of old age. And when Strange recently did die in the Marvel comic called The Death of Doctor Strange, he had already concocted a way for a younger version of himself from the timeline to take his place and defend Earth against any extra-dimensional forces that might seek to take advantage of his own death. There's planning ahead, and then there's Dr. Stephen Strange taking it to a whole different level. Coming in at number 3, we have Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. As one of the earlier members of the Uncanny X-Men, Bobby has had a lot of time over the years to explore his powers, and contrary to appearances, he can do far more than just convert his body into ice. Classified as an Omega level mutant, the most powerful kind there is, Iceman is capable of not only controlling the temperature of all of his own molecules, but is able to manipulate water molecules entirely as part of his own mass. This means the possibilities for Bobby's powers are as intense and malleable as water itself, allowing him to freeze the blood within enemies' veins, travel instantly through a stream of water, or even turn himself into a massive snow-covered giant capable of wading his way across the literal ocean. Totally not showing off there, Bobby. Totally not. Coming in at number 2, we have Peter Parker, aka the Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man definitely isn't known for being a weakling, but his actual physical strength is actually far beyond what anyone in even the Marvel Universe would expect. Under situations of intense stress, Peter Parker has been shown as capable of lifting literal tons worth of rubble and debris, far beyond the usual strength that he generally seems to show off. And when Peter Parker's body was briefly taken over by Otto Octavius's brain, the villain was stunned to discover that Spider-Man has actually been holding back every punch he's ever thrown, after the villain controlling Peter's body accidentally punched the Scorpion's jaw right off. Maybe it's a good idea to not try and get punched by Spider-Man. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Incredible Hulk, a character who's known for being strong, but might actually be the most underrated when it comes to just how strong he can become. Ever since being bombarded with gamma rays, Bruce Banner's limits for physical strength have been said to be practically non-existent, with all-knowing characters like the Beyonder outright stating that the Hulk has no limits to his physical strength. The only difference between different Hulk forms is their starting strength, with all of them still having the potential to theoretically complete feats such as outpulling a black hole. It's this endless capacity for potential destruction that has made the Hulk such an alluring target to evil forces over the years, but if the Hulk's proven anything, it's that maybe he's not a guy you should try to mind control. Coming in at number 10, we have the famous Scott Summers of the X-Men, aka Cyclops. For years best known as the leader of the X-Men that has to rely on a visor made of ruby to control the concussive blasts constantly shooting from his eyes, Cyclops eventually found himself at a breaking point after years of family-related trauma, Marvel's most infamous love triangle, and the constant stress of mutant kind constantly being attacked and hated by humanity. When mutants became an endangered species following the events of M-Day, Cyclops began to lead the X-Men in a more extremist direction, and following a conflict with the Avengers over the imminent arrival of the Phoenix Force, Cyclops lost control and wound up killing his beloved mentor, Professor X. And while it can be argued that eventually Cyclops' actions led to a better future for mutants, with Professor X and most mutants now enjoying the benefits of resurrection on the island of Krakoa, nearly wiping out the entire Avengers team along with your own father figure was definitely a dark turn for the guy named Cyclops. Coming in at number 9, we've got another member of the X-Men with Angel. One of the earliest members of the team and enabled with the ability to fly due to the feathery wings on his back, Angel was unfortunately wounded and had to have his wings removed after being attacked by the evil mutant named Harpoon. Traumatized by this turn of events, Angel was manipulated by the villain Apocalypse into agreeing to serve as one of his 4 horsemen in exchange for having his wings returned. Now known as Archangel, the Horseman of Death, he fought against the X-Men until he was finally able to be knocked back to his senses by the actions of Iceman. And hey, what are friends for if not bringing you back from the edge of being an accomplice to superpowered genocide? Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Man, aka Tony Stark. And no, I promise I'm not just talking from Cap's perspective in Civil War, although honestly, Tony did some messed up stuff in that event too. No, what I'm talking about is during an event in the 90s when a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves. Over time, Tony's morals were slowly eroded until he was an active threat to the rest of the Avengers team, and was only able to be defeated with the help of his own heroic teenage self from the past. And while eventually, through comic book magic, Tony Stark would be returned to his usual status quo, this is still an intense example of just how dangerous an armed billionaire like Iron Man could be without any morals holding him back. Coming in at number 7, we have Sinestro. While he may be best known these days as the arch-enemy of the Green Lanterns, in particular Hal Jordan, Sinestro's origins were a lot more heroic than you'd expect. Sinestro actually used to be one of the most respected members of the Green Lantern Corps, until his overseers began to notice that his sector of space was becoming more and more of a dictatorship, with Sinestro having absolute control over all the citizens he was supposed to be protecting. While he had good intentions to keep the peace, Sinestro was stripped of his green power ring, and in his rage, formed the Yellow Lantern Corps to fight back against the group that he believed fundamentally wronged him. Coming in at number 6, we have the Plutonian. Hailing from the independent comic book series Irredeemable, published by Boom Studios, the Plutonian was a what if Superman started killing everyone story years before that premise became oversaturated with projects like Brightburn, The Boys, and the Injustice games. After spending years as the most beloved but mysterious superhero on the planet, the Plutonian loses his mind from the stress of his job, and begins a war against the rest of his superpowered brethren by destroying a city of 7 million people. Most of this entire series is about different characters struggling to stay one step ahead of the Plutonian's killing spree, and if you're in the mood for a dark, nearly 40-issue run with a surprisingly interesting ending, I would definitely recommend it. Coming in at number 5, we have Hal Jordan, aka the Green Lantern. The 90s were an interesting time in comics, as the medium continued to mature and tell darker stories after starting along that trend in the 80s, and it led to the attempted reinvention of multiple heroes. And just like Iron Man, Hal Jordan is someone who is taken in a more villainous direction. Following the destruction of his hometown of Coast City, Hal Jordan went mad with grief and killed multiple other Green Lanterns in an attempt to increase his own power. Dubbing himself the new name of Parallax, these rash actions would eventually be justified as being caused by a fear parasite of the same name, but for a time, Hal Jordan was one of the biggest cosmic threats in the entire DC universe. Coming in at number 4, we have Ozymandias from Watchmen. Serving for years as one of the most popular vigilantes in America, Ozymandias, or Adrian Veidt, eventually came to believe that something more drastic than heroics was needed to truly save the world. For that twisted reason, he faked an alien invasion against the world that resulted in millions of deaths to unite America and the USSR against a common foe. To do this, he needed to manipulate Dr. Manhattan, the most powerful being in the universe, into believing he should leave Earth, as to not interfere with Ozymandias' plans. And by the time anyone realized just how far their former ally had fallen and what he planned to do, he'd already done it 35 minutes ago. Coming in at number 3, we have Jean Grey, aka the Dark Phoenix. An X-Men storyline and character turn so iconic that they've tried turning it into a movie on 2 separate occasions, Jean Grey has long been one of the ideal hosts for the Phoenix Force, a fiery power that's one of the oldest in the entire Marvel universe. And while she was originally able to contain all of this power and still use it for heroics, eventually Jean was corrupted by it, becoming the Dark Phoenix and wiping out the planet of D'Bari 4, ending 5 billion lives in the process. And while it could be argued this is more the Phoenix Force's doing than Jean's, you can still expect to get some suspicious glances if your powers wound up blowing up a planet. Coming in at number 2, we have the Scarlet Witch, also known as Wanda Maximoff. Originally believing herself to be the mutant daughter of Magneto, Wanda is in reality one of the most powerful magic wielders in the Marvel multiverse, and a conduit for chaos magic that allows her to rewrite reality to her will. And after years of being unsure of her own identity and the loss of her children to the demon Mephisto, Wanda finally snapped and used her reality-changing powers to declare no more mutants, kicking off a brand new era for the X-Men as she single-handedly ensured that mutants became an endangered species. Wouldn't it just be nicer to put everyone in a 1950s sitcom again? And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Ultimate Universe version of Reed Richards. While the mainstream Marvel Universe's version of Mr. Fantastic has consistently been a hero and inspiration to the rest of the world, his Ultimate Universe counterpart couldn't be more tragically different. Isolated with his thoughts after the disbandment of the Fantastic Four, Reed became obsessed with preventing the destruction of the Ultimate Universe, and eventually became the villainous Maker, willing to do whatever it takes to ensure his universe's survival, even if it meant the complete destruction of the rest of the multiverse. Unlike many other iconic heroes on this list, this version of Reed Richards has yet to become a good guy again, and remains an active threat throughout the multiverse that will surely come up against the real Fantastic Four again in the future.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Time Trapper. First appearing in Adventure Comics 317, the Time Trapper comes from the far future. He actually prevented the Legion of Superheroes from traveling into their future using an iron curtain of time. He likes to hang out at his home located safely at the end of time. How neat is that? Kinda similar to Kang. In his first few issues, the Time Trapper was seeking the Concentrator, which was a weapon that draws energy, any energy source in the known universe, together. It's also a pretty big secret as well. The Time Trapper pretended to be the commissioner of the Science Police and tortured the Legionnaires, although they said it was a test in order to gain intel. Now, Lightning Lad knew something was fishy, so he cracked and spilled secrets, false ones of course. So this brought the team to actually figure out how to assemble the real Concentrator. And when an angry Time Trapper returned, he launched a plethora of Dark Stars at the crew, but luckily that Concentrator could absorb any energy source, like I said, so they were blasted out of existence. We're good. The Legion lived to tell the tale, but we just got Kang in the MCU, so I don't think we need another Time Lord showing up. My brain hurts enough already. Give us like 5 years and then bring in some more time stuff. Number 9, Eclipso. Making his first appearance in House of Secrets issue 61, Eclipso was made from God's spirit of wrath. He's the living embodiment of wrath. It doesn't get more menacing than that, folks. He was made to punish the wicked, to clean the world of evil, of course, until the Spectre replaced him. Wrath was driven by anger, whereas vengeance, that required more of a discerning hand. So what happened after was Wrath's physicality was trapped within an all-black diamond called the Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness, kind of like the heart of the ocean, but instead of Rose tossing it overboard, a treasure hunter found it in Africa and accidentally split it into 1,000 pieces, and now we're all Each of those pieces contained a shard of darkness. So Eclipso figured out a way to possess people through these diamonds, and that first man being possessed was Bruce Gordon. Bruce was a scientist specializing in solar energy, and while he was in a jungle observing a solar eclipse, a sorcerer named Mofir attacked him with one of those black diamonds, and after that, every eclipse, Eclipso would take over Bruce. Unbeknownst to Bruce though, Eclipso would soon learn to bind himself to anybody near any shard that happened to be angry at the time. Nowadays there's a lot of angry folks, so this is bad news. The entity of wrath possessing anybody who gets upset, that sounds, yeah, just smile and wave I guess, just lie. Just lie and pretend you're happy, then you're good. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to spread the love and hit that thumbs up, it really does wonders for us at the channel. You guys are amazing, thanks so much for watching, let's keep this going. Number 8, Justice Lord Superman. Coming from the animated universe, the 2003 Justice League episode titled A Better World showed us one that's rather the opposite. This parallel universe showed Kal-El and the Justice Lord storming the White House after President Lex Luthor had just executed the Flash. Now the team of course wasn't too happy, so Batman and Wonder Woman fought off the Secret Service while Superman told Luthor that he's taken him in. Lex is insane, so he had a button ready that could literally start a nuclear war if it was pressed. And he's threatening Superman, saying that he needs to use deadly force if he wants to save the people. So Superman's like, okay, and then just eyes glow red, and then he turns them into ashes, just like that. And when Batman and Wonder Woman come back in, it's far too late. Superman just has a smile on his face, and Lex is just a pile o' dust. Good times. After this, for the next 2 years, the Justice Lords would rule using violence like it was normal. They saw this and they're like, well, that certainly did the trick. Let's just keep doing that. Justice Lord Superman used his heat vision to wipe out all of Earth's criminals and villains. If we had him in the DCEU, the movie would be a lot shorter than 4 hours. It would be like 36 minutes. Snyder Cut, maybe 44 minutes. Number 7, Superboy Prime, another super menace. First appearing in DC Comics Presents issue 87, this version of Supes has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic, which is a fantastic combo. He arrived to Earth and was soon discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in a New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero named Superman. So yeah, Superman already existed on this Earth, so Clark grew up and later attended a costume party at a beach and dressed like Superman. He went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet and it was all a good time, and then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, this portal opens up, and the Superman from the comics pops out. Now at the same time, young Clark's powers manifested and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy then followed that Superman back into the portal to an alternate reality and he would never be the same again. Crisis on Infinite Earths was this multiversal catastrophe where parallel dimensions were being consumed by the Anti-Monitor, who I'll talk about later. Superboy dove in, joined the fight, but was unable to prevent the destruction of his Earth. So Superboy Prime and other survivors escaped to a paradise dimension that Alexander Luthor Jr. offered. Using crystals, Superboy just relived happy times in this paradise, but eventually he got frustrated and shattered the barrier of reality. He literally punched everything apart. He retconned quite a bit in DC continuity. For example, he brought back Jason Todd, he combined Superman's origins, Doom Patrol was now rebooted, and we had numerous incarnations of Hawkman and the League of Superheroes. I feel like DC could use a big bad Superboy Prime punch to clear up the timeline, but hopefully the Flash movie does that, because this guy is just a little too crazy. Number 6, Brainiac. Another close rival of Superman's, Brainiac made his first appearance in Action Comics 242. This guy right off the bat is a very specific villain. He would love to steal cities. Yeah, watch out for your cities, keep them safe, put them under your mattress. He took Metropolis at one point. This guy's wild. He would use his shrinking ray, shrink your city, and then take them back to his planet. Vril Doc started his days as a scientist, and one day he successfully cloned himself because he needed an assistant, so who better to hire than yourself? He built the spaceship Next and traveled to the cosmos, gaining knowledge and studying alien organisms with the help of his robot drones, and during these travels he came across Krypton while General Zod was still running the show. So of course, this dude shrunk down the entire city of Kandor and studied it in his ship. He made a remote scout unit that believed it was the original Vril Docs, and then it traveled to Earth and took over the body of sideshow mentalist Milton Fine, whose stage name was Brainiac. Now it makes sense. Number 5, Necron. Also known as the Lord of the Unliving. Great. Necron made his first appearance in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 2. He's literally the embodiment of death. Necron figured out the land of the living existed after the death of an immortal caused a rift to open between dimensions. So Necron saw all of this life and he was like, this looks tasty. He wanted it. Well, really he wanted to master it and get out of his hell, his literal hell that he was living in. So he resurrected Krona, even throwing in a classy army of the dead to assist in taking down the Guardians of the Universe. Taking them down ended up widening the rift, so it took all the Green Lantern Corps to stop them, but even after winning, countless lives were lost in this fight. Hal Jordan ended up going to the land of the unliving, accepting the possibility that he may just never return, and there he gathered the souls of other fallen lanterns, and it was just enough to fight off Necron and return, with the Guardians sealing the rift promptly afterwards. But like Necron says, you can never defeat death. Back in 2009, it was revealed Necron was behind the Black Lanterns and instigated the Blackest Night event. There he took over the bodies of Wonder Woman and Superman while also bringing back dead heroes to join his side. Number 4, Prometheus. Helmets are pretty important, especially in combat, and especially if one helmet in particular gave you the skills to beat, I don't know, Batman. Prometheus first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus issue 1 back in the late 90s, and at first he was just the son of two criminals who traveled across the US, real Bonnie and Clyde style. But as a kid he would have to go with them, right, because they couldn't afford a babysitter. They were rich with like mob money, but they couldn't afford a babysitter. Okay, so eventually the police caught on and they were never seen again. The police killed them in front of the boy, almost like a darker Bruce Wayne origin. So he grew up with their fortune, only it was a stolen fortune. Then he traveled the world, trained as a fighter, trained as a mercenary. He learned a dozen different languages and he was pretty skilled by the end of it. Then he found the ancient city of Shambhala where their monks studied evil. They trusted him and showed him their greatest treasure, which was an alien ship. Not too bad. Their leader was actually an alien in disguise. He landed there, but Prometheus had to kill him to obtain the key to enter the Ghost Zone. The Ghost Zone was this infinite expanse of white emptiness, the space between dimensions. Kryptonians called this the Phantom Zone. And in there, Prometheus built himself a house, a costume, and his first advanced helmet that downloads info to take on the Justice League. He was great, like he shot Martian Manhunter so then he couldn't change, he infected Steel's armor with a virus, he hypnotized Huntress, and he hit Green Lantern with a neural shaft so his ring was useless. He also trapped Zuriel in said Ghost Zone and beat Batman with hand-to-hand combat. Not too shabby at all. Number 3, the Batman who laughs. We've seen quite a few Batman on screen. We're even seeing Michael Keaton return to Gotham in the next Flash movie, which is pretty exciting. But the Batman who laughs, aka The Darkest Knight, might be a bit too hardcore for the theaters. Coming from the Dark Multiverse, first appearing in Dark Days The Casting, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, comes a twisted Earth 22 version of the Batman who laughs. The Joker here is insane. He goes on this spree throughout Gotham, just chaos in the streets. He took out Jim Gordon, then he poisoned Batman. It was all bad, and then once Batman was able to move again after the poison had run its course, he broke the Joker's neck, which is already immediately so dark. But even the Joker was prepared after death. After that snap, he let out this toxic breath that let everybody near him get infected, including Batman. Cut to 2 days later, Batman and Superman are talking about what happened, and when Superman tells Bruce that a kid infected by Joker bit a doctor, Bruce ends up laughing, like this maniacal laugh. And he catches himself after, he's like, sorry about that. Superman knows something's off here, but a day later, Bruce called the team to the Batcave and went full on Omni-Man. He took out the entire team before anybody caught on to his new and violent personality. Number 2, the Anti-Monitor. Making his first appearance in Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 2, the Anti-Monitor was DC's excuse to cut out a lot of fat from the comics, basically. The multiverse was introduced back in the 60s. The Golden Age heroes were residing on Earth 2, and then came Earth 3, and then so on and danforth. So when Crisis on Infinite Earths came around, DC Comics introduced this big bad cosmic villain to set something straight going forward. Clean up the multiple timelines, makes sense. Now it all started when Krona performed this experiment. They wanted to see the origin of the universe, but instead an opposite universe was created, the Antimatter universe. Anti-Monitor wanted nothing but death and destruction, and after battling his brother for, say, I don't know, 1 billion years, they both fell unconscious. And then 9 billion years later, they were woken up. When they tried to destroy Earth 1, many heroes lost their lives, and in order to stop that chaos, Superman had to punch them into a star. Who knows, with the Flash opening up the multiversal door, we could see him on the big screen in our lifetime. Maybe. Maybe. And finally, number 1, Perpetua. Of course, one of the most feared beings in the greater Omniverse. Also known as the First Creator, she made her first appearance in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. She was the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and World Folder. She was actually one of the hands that created the multiverse, literally. Each member were these celestial beings and they would pass on and their energy would return to the source, but Perpetua was different. She wanted a dark, vicious reality that would live forever. So she created the first iteration of the multiverse using negative crisis energies and then had 3 cosmic children. She was creating an army also to rule over the multiverse, so her children snitched. Yeah, they told the judges of the source, and Perpetua was locked away outside the source wall with her negative energies. But even locked away, she was able to connect to Lex Luthor, who believed freeing her would make him a hero on some multiversal scale. So next time you want to kick somebody out of your party, just banish them to the source wall with their negative energy. That's how he works.
Number 10, Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer gains the power of the Infinity Gauntlet in a what-if story from the 1989 series featured in issue 49 of that series. What if Silver Surfer possessed the Infinity Gauntlet? Well, he would obviously try to use the power for good. He ends up being lifted up into godhood because he wields such awesome power and attempts to turn the universe into a paradise, eradicating hunger and disease for all races across the cosmos. Also, fun fact, did you know that back in the day when you had the Infinity Gauntlet you were considered a god and that was like part of the story? That was the thing. Silver Surfer also makes death a more approachable hot lady so that when people die they will not fear her but cherish her instead. I mean, I personally think Death was already hot before, but I guess now she's more hot, so that's great. In the end, unfortunately, even Silver Surfer becomes corrupted by the Gauntlet's power. However, our heroes have a solution for that and introduce Shala Bal, Norrin Radd's lost love, into the mix. She manages to be able to level with Norrin and even convinces him to renounce the power, saving the world with his final sacrifice. And her final sacrifice too, because they're both like, okay, well, we're just gonna die now, bye. Number 9. Nebula. Nebula is a complicated character. She's not really a full-on villain and she's not really a full-on hero, but I feel like her portrayal by Karen Gillan in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy series has helped us to see her more as a villain worth redeeming and moving more into the realm of hero than anything else. And in honor of that, I'm going to count her as such for the purpose of this list. One of the last times I was reading a sort of hero Nebula story was when she teamed up with Thane, Star Fox or Eros if you will, and Trico Slatteris, the champion of the universe, to seemingly defeat Thanos. In reality, Thane was using them for his own means, and when Nebula found this out, she attempted to defeat Thane herself. In the comics, she was one of the characters to get her hands on the Infinity Gauntlet during the events of the Infinity Gauntlet story. She ended up being the really big bad when she took the gauntlet from Thanos and then had to be defeated thereafter. At that time, Nebula was pretty much a villain, so yeah. But like I said, we can kind of consider her a hero, so she was a villain at the time, but she's still a hero. Does that make sense? I'm counting it, whatever. It's my list. I decide who stays. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like this where we talk about who's wielding the Infinity Gauntlet and what they did with it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I personally would love to see like an alternate Thanos Infinity Gauntlet list as well. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if we have enough alternate Thanoses for that list, but I think it would be cool if we could do it. Number 8. Deadpool. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly if you're familiar with the character, Deadpool also has wielded the Infinity Gauntlet before. In this case, he ended up getting it from Thanos when he pulled a bait and switch, swapping out the real gauntlet with a fake. Deadpool then planned to use the gauntlet to roast the Marvel Universe, but instead got celebrity roasted himself by host Howard the Duck and a slew of other heroes, villains, friends, allies, and even lovers. In the end, however, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall to do some roasting of the audience and ultimately returns the gauntlet to its rightful owner. Thanos, of course. What did you think? He was gonna give it to someone else and save the day? This is still Deadpool we're talking about. Also, I'm pretty sure the issue this story comes from, issue 45 of Jerry Dugan's Deadpool run from 2013, is also where the Thanos Copter originated. Either way, if you're a fan of Thanos Copter, it is in there too. Thanos Copter. Thanos is flying around in it. Number 7. Gamora. Gamora ended up using the Infinity Gem's combined power to fold the universe in half, creating Warp World in the comics. Warp World contained only combined Marvel characters who were all composed of 2 different souls, like Emma Frost and Wolverine, who were combined together to create Diamond Patch, or Weapon Hex, a combination of Laura Kinney aka X-23 and Scarlet Witch. Technically, Gamora didn't use a gauntlet specifically to do this, but she did utilize the power of all the gems, which makes it, I think, close enough for her to rank here. At the time, what she was doing was, well, pretty villainous, but Gamora in general is considered to be a hero in modern comics especially. Well, when she's not stealing gems and folding the universe in half, of course, which is also from modern comics. To check out this story, you'd want to check out Infinity Wars, so go do that because Warp World is cool. Number 6. Black Panther. T'Challa was the one to use the Infinity Gauntlet against God Emperor Doom on his own created version of Battleworld. Doom's created version of Battleworld, not T'Challa's, just to be clear. This reality was a patchwork one created by Doom after the inevitable destruction of the Incursions. Doom faced T'Challa and Namor, the former of which also came wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. While initially T'Challa succeeded in defeating Doom, he inevitably regenerated and then destroyed the Infinity Gauntlet in turn. However, while Doom beat Black Panther even with the Infinity Gauntlet, it was then revealed that this had all been a part of a master plan and was intended only to distract Doom, which evidently had pretty much worked. God Emperor Doom was so OP though. RIP God Emperor Doom. Doom's still around though, so I wonder if he remembers that. No, he probably doesn't remember that. I think it all got wiped. He just remembered that he killed his arch nemesis, and he was like, I'm happy now. Also, I'm not scarred. Number 5. Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards aimed to wield the Infinity Gauntlet, collecting the gems and assembling them all with the intention to destroy them and prevent anyone else from gaining their dangerous level of power. He used his own group of banded together heroes to find the gems and collect them. Unfortunately, his plan did not work, and he had this secret superhero Brainiac group, the Illuminati, instead become the protectors of the gems, which were then split up. up. Each one of them was given one to hide in the universe so that the gauntlet could never be reassembled and used against them. Of course, this didn't end up being a permanent solution to that problem because these are the Infinity Gems, and no matter which way you slice it or split these gems up, they're eventually going to be used again by someone in the future to do some kind of good or ill. Usually though they're used for ill. So yeah. And no matter how hard you try to hide those Infinity Gems, people go and find them. Number 4. Hulk. Obviously one of the heroes we can't leave out considering how mighty he is and how important his time with the Gauntlet was in the MCU, is the Hulk. The Hulk wore the Infinity Gauntlet and was the one to use it to bring everyone back in the MCU. If you were wondering how a big, not super intelligent berserker like the Hulk managed this feat, managed to stay focused, this was actually during the time in the MCU where Hulk was more in balance with Bruce Banner. The two beings were more merged at this point and basically became Professor Hulk. Hulk wore the gauntlet in the MCU during Avengers Endgame and used it to bring back everyone that had been snapped out of existence, undoing what Thanos had done in the previous film, Avengers Infinity War. In the comics, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the alternate Hulk of that Earth also wielded the Infinity Gauntlet, or rather the Infinity Gauntlets, as in that universe there's 2 of them, but that's a story for another list. Number 3. Iron Man. Someone that has been immortalized when it comes to his use of the Infinity Gauntlet, or Iron Gauntlet if you rather, in the MCU is Iron Man. Iron Man snapped past Thanos and his army out of existence, which resulted in the heroes winning the day in Avengers Endgame. Thanos returned to try and set straight what the heroes were trying to fix in their universe, which was his plan to eliminate half the population. Hulk had successfully snapped back those who had been killed off by Thanos' initial snap, but now Tony Stark was fighting to save the world against a past Thanos who had followed them there to once again follow through with his future self's and really his own self's plan. In using the gauntlet, however, Tony gave up his life as it was so powerful a weapon that using it killed him. Also, he kinda had to put it in his suit, and I don't know if his suit was properly wired for all that power. This made Iron Man one of the greatest heroes eternally, but not one of the greatest Eternals, because that's a whole different group of heroes. Tony has also briefly wielded the Infinity Gauntlet in the comics, but it went quite a bit differently for him in comparison. Once again, a story for another list. Number 2. Captain America. Captain America actually also wore the gauntlet, in the comics at least. He attempted to use the gauntlet to keep Earth 616 safe during the incursions. This was a dangerous time in the comics when basically different realities were colliding and thereby destroying one another. Captain America attempted to use the power of the Infinity Gauntlet to push away the impending Earth and help prevent their collision. However, he failed in his attempt, and instead all of the stones on the gauntlet were seemingly destroyed except for the Time Stone. Probably one of the most useful stones too when you think about it in terms of getting the other Infinity Gems back at some point. I feel like there's gonna be someone that's gonna be like, you're calling them gems and stones. What is it, Amanda? Look, they're stones I'm pretty sure in the movies, they're gems in the comics. Gems, stones, it's all the same thing. They're rocks. They're infinity rocks, that's what we should call them. Number 1. Adam Warlock. Probably one of the most famous people to wield the gauntlet when it comes to comic book heroes from Marvel is Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is often seen as a sometimes ally, sometimes opponent to Thanos, and in this case, he was kinda both. He ended up initially joining the heroes during the events of the Infinity Gauntlet in an attempt to defeat Thanos in the comics. However, they failed. When Nebula, who was known only as Thanos' granddaughter at that time, usurped Thanos, taking the power for herself, Thanos and Adam Warlock decided to team up to put a stop to her. This is when Adam Warlock got his hand on the gauntlet. However, after ascending and becoming a god thanks to the gauntlet's power, as I said that used to be a thing, he was instructed by the Living Tribunal and convinced to basically disassemble the gauntlet, hiding the gems with those that he trusted to protect them, one of which remaining with him, the Soul Stone. And I'm pretty sure Adam just held on to that and was like, now I have the power of the Soul Stone. As if he wasn't powerful enough already. Jeez, Adam. You're already so powerful. Number 10. Simon Baz. Simon Baz is one of the newer Green Lanterns, though that feels a little bit weird to say now, as he was first introduced in 2012, and we've definitely had quite a few new ones pop up since then. Also, 2012 was almost 10 years ago, wow. Before he was a Green Lantern, he was an engineer turned street racer turned car thief due to the result of the financial crisis. Due to his Muslim origins, being a Lebanese American following the tragedy of 9/11, he had to deal with many people judging him and his family based on his background and how he looked. Because of this, when he was apprehended for attempting to steal a car, he was suspected of being involved in much larger schemes related to national security, and was therefore sent to Guantanamo Bay. Fortunately, it was at that time that he was chosen by his ring to become a Green Lantern. Even while dealing with a ring that was programmed by Sinestro and not really knowing what he was doing because he was super new at the time, he still managed to create constructs when he first came up against the Justice League following a misunderstanding. I think it's pretty impressive that he was even able to make constructs, because I feel like that would be a lot. Number 9, Jessica Cruz. I mean, Jessica has to be one of the most powerful Green Lanterns at this point, especially given, well, everything that she's been through. Jessica started off inheriting the power ring of Earth 3, which was in itself a story. It actually took control of her itself, forcing her to become its host against her own will. In the end, Batman helped her to regain control of herself by sharing with her his experience of finding strength in great moments of tragedy, where he himself had felt like a victim. Jessica would then train with Hal Jordan to gain a better sense of how to use her ring, but only briefly, as Hal was kinda soon after called to space. That was when Simon and Jessica were left alone together with a battery between them to share as they attempted to figure out how to best be superheroes and lanterns together. Hal basically forced them to become partners, and he was like, you two need to figure this out. Jessica also struggles with severe anxiety, which is one of the reasons Simon was kind of frustrated to be paired up with her, at least to begin with. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you love space cops, Green Lanterns as much as I do, please be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also comment below, subscribe, hang out, check out some other videos, you know. Just chill with us for a bit. How are you doing? Put your feet up. Feel good. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. You know, just be cool and hang out with us. We like you. We like you. Stick around. Number 8, Alan Scott. A lot of comic fans may think of Alan Scott as being one of the weakest Green Lanterns because of, well, his weakness to wood, but don't let that fool you. Although his weakness to wood is pretty silly, Alan Scott is still an extremely powerful and unique Green Lantern. He was the first Green Lantern and has since had himself more separated from the general Space Cops Green Lantern Corps in terms of how he operates and how his powers work. I mean, initially when he was introduced with Earth 2, Alan Scott, he wasn't even really connected to the Green Lantern Corps. Because back then, we didn't have to do origin stories and really make everything make sense, but here we are now. Alan Scott's powers actually come from a magical entity that was once the prisoner of the Guardians of the Universe, known as the Starheart. At least if we're going with the New Earth story, which here, we're going with the New Earth story because I like it the best. The Starheart ended up on Earth and saved Alan's life. He wore the entity like a ring, which for many years was the source of his power, and adopted the mantle Green Lantern. Alan has also managed since then to merge with his own battery that he fashioned out of the Starheart. Basically, he fashioned a battery and a ring out of it. In merging with his battery, though, he became even more powerful as he became the power source for his own ring. Which is pretty cool. You gotta respect Alan Scott. That's what I think. Number 7, Kilowog. Kilowog is the main recruiter for the Green Lanterns and is also their head trainer. He pretty much trains all of the new recruits, and with good reason, as he's a very powerful and capable Green Lantern. Kilowog is so powerful that back in the New Earth continuity, when his homeworld, Bolivax Vic, was first destroyed and he was on it, although his ring only instinctively protected him, he actually used his willpower and his ring to capture the billions of life energies of the citizens on his homeworld, storing them within his ring until he could find a new and safe world to release them on. Unfortunately, his homeworld and family would still later be destroyed by Sinestro even after he saved them, but it was still an impressive feat for him to have saved them all the first time around. But it's very sad that they all died anyways. That sucks. Kilowog has a sad story, friends. It's sad. Number 6, Sinestro. Sinestro, before Hal Jordan showed up, was celebrated as the most powerful of all the Green Lanterns. That is, of course, until Hal exposed him as the villain he truly was. Despite the fact that Sinestro is now considered a villain and is the head of his own corps, the Yellow Lantern-based Sinestro Corps, he also deserves respect for just how crazy powerful he is and was as a Green Lantern. There is a reason that fellow Lanterns considered him to be the best. I mean, he even had to go back to being a Green Lantern for a time because he was so skilled and the Guardians needed him. Even though at that point he was already a leader of the Sinestro Corps and he was very happy as such. He He's like, I don't really want to go back to being a Green Lantern, and they're like, well, we're the Guardians of the Universe, you have no choice. Also, every time I say Guardians of the Universe, I've been wanting to say Guardians of the Galaxy today. Obviously, I need more Guardians of the Galaxy in my life. I'm not sure what's happening to me. Hopefully I haven't, and I won't say Guardians of the Galaxy in this video, because that would make no sense. Guardians of the Galaxy are not applicable to Green Lanterns. Not at all. No connection. Totally different publishers. Number 5, Jo Malene. Jo probably has some of the greatest potential of all the Green Lanterns we have ever met. She was given a very special kind of ring, one that doesn't actually need a battery but can self-charge on its own. Of course, its charging is slow going, and Jo isn't a master of it yet, but still, it's very impressive. It's like, we're talking like Alan Scott coolness. In Future State, we got to see a glimpse into Jo's possible future, where she is a member of the Justice League and also becomes proclaimed as the greatest detective in the entire universe, which is pretty huge. Jo might not be there yet, but she shows so much promise in terms of what she can accomplish with her willpower, even just from what we've seen in Far Sector, that I think she deserves this spot, especially considering how powerful she'll likely go on to become. I'm just saying now, I'm putting my bets down that Jo's gonna be one of the most powerful Green Lanterns of all time. I'm also so ready to see her and Hal Jordan go toe to toe. That is a fight / team up I cannot wait to read. And if you missed that clash of things, that was from Future State Green Lantern issue number 2. It's the last story in there, and woo! Love that story. Number 4, Sodom Yat. Sodom Yat is a Daxamite, an alien race who is similar in terms of abilities, powers, and physiology to Superman's race, the Kryptonians. So basically, Sodom Yat is like if Superman were a Green Lantern in terms of how much natural power he packs. Sodom Yat was also given a rare opportunity to bond with Ion. Ion is the creature within the Green Lantern battery, similar to Parallax with its tie to the Yellow Lanterns, or Sinestro Corps, obviously, but not inherently evil like Parallax was, as Ion doesn't feed on fear. I believe only 2 characters have ever been known to bond with Ion, and Sodom Yat was one of them. Also, if you're confused about Ion and the whole creatures thing, it's a whole thing. I'm not really going to get into it, but basically each different type of lantern, each color has their own creature. It's a whole thing. Number 3, Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is a favorite for many fans, and we all know him as the Lantern who is able to tap into the powers of the White Lanterns, which is pretty cool. But did you know that his connection to the emotional spectrum actually extends out beyond even just becoming a White Lantern? And did you know that it was Kyle himself who through his own willpower pushed through to explore the ultraviolet range? He actually pursued becoming a White Lantern in order to put a stop to the corrupted Guardians of the Universe, and along the way unlocked the full range of the emotional spectrum, meaning that Kyle isn't just a great Green Lantern, but can also be a great Lantern of any other color besides, because he is so in tune with all of his emotions. Which of course means he isn't maybe the most powerful Green Lantern, but he's definitely the most powerful in general, all around. We get to see him grow all around as a hero in the New 52 New Guardians series, so if you're wanting to check out that journey, check that series out. He also is one of the very few Lanterns to bond with Ion, the Green Lantern battery's creature, and their bond is mutual, meaning that both lend one another strength and power. So yeah, him and Sodom Yat, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Number 2, John Stewart. John Stewart has to be high up on our list just for all the insane constructs he's managed to create. At one point, his ring actually told him that his willpower was greater than it could even process. So we are talking off the charts willpower, which has helped John to stand out by accomplishing some pretty mighty tasks. Something else that I love about John Stewart is just the reasoning behind abandoning his mask. John isn't just strong of will, but he's also strong when it comes to his courage in revealing his true identity to the world. He does not wear a mask because he wants to be seen, and he wants other people of color to know that they too can be a hero like him. And I love that. Number 1, Hal Jordan. There might be some weird stuff going on with Hal right now, but it's pretty much guaranteed that we'll all consider him to be one of the strongest Green Lanterns around for as long as Green Lanterns exist in comics. When it comes to Hal Jordan, the thing that makes him stand out above all others is his willpower, which is, you know, kind of the main thing you need as a Green Lantern. One time after he died, his willpower was so strong, he managed to resurrect himself. You know you are crazy powerful when you can just like will yourself back to life. That is some Jean Grey levels of power. And even though he was possessed by Parallax at the time, it was still Hal who was responsible for destroying the central battery on Oa and for killing the entire Corps, which is obviously awful. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but still, it's a really insane and kind of impressive feat, I think. That's crazy. Hal just was like, boom, you're all gone. Woo! Number 10, Draculina. To be clear, when we talk about heroes you've never heard of, we're more talking about those that sit on the outskirts of the superhero fandoms. So you won't find them likely on the big screen or on DC's or Marvel's main teams like the Justice League, Avengers, or the X-Men. Instead, these are heroes who come from a more humble background by comparison. Some of them may have been simply forgotten due to just how long they've been around, whereas others typically are associated with smaller or even in some cases now defunct publishers. Coming from the world of fellow indie hero Vampirella, Draculina is sort of Ella's adopted sister and also kind of her ex-lover or ex-one-night stand. There have actually been at least 2 different Draculinas, possibly 3 at this point. One is Lilith's biological daughter and the biological twin sister of Vampy, who is blonde. The other one, the one I'm focusing on, who was once Vampy's lover, became obsessed with her and was eventually adopted by Lilith to become the new Draculina. If you want to learn more about her and other Vampy adjacent characters, Sacred 6 is a pretty cool comic that I would recommend that you check out. Or you can learn more about this version of Draculina in the 2019 Vampirella series from Dynamite. Both of those series, by the way, are by Christopher Priest. Both Draculinas go by the name Victory, although the one we're talking about here was originally named Victoria, but the two do differ in terms of appearance and, like I said, blood relation. Blood relation in this context almost becomes a vampire pun. This new Draculina isn't exactly a vampire, by the way, but is armed with a demonic ring that basically grants her powers similar to one, allowing her to accurately play the part. Draculina is currently a property of Dynamite Comics. Number 9, Tony Chu. Tony Chu is a quirky and unique character, but still is ultimately a hero, and even technically has superpowers, so he would qualify as a superhero. Tony is a detective who possesses the unique power of sebopathy. Whatever he eats, except for beets, he gains in-depth knowledge of, being able to tell where all the ingredients that make it up came from, being able to taste everything about that ingested food. Tony uses this skill to basically solve murders mainly, sometimes even ingesting parts of victims or the accused, sometimes even ingesting parts of the victims or the suspects to learn more about the case and help solve it. He initially worked for the Philadelphia Police Department, but ultimately gets fired after they witness him eating part of a deceased suspect. He later is hired by the FDA. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, there are actually a lot more indie superheroes that I would love to tell you about as we dive into the world of unknown supers. So if you want to learn more, be sure to let us know by commenting below and giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Red Sonja. One of my favorite lesser known heroes is Red Sonja. Red Sonja comes to us from the less sci-fi, more fantasy based world of sword and sorcery. She is an extremely gifted fighter, marksman, and sword bearer. Red Sonja, the She-Devil, is said to have been given her name for, well, many different reasons. One such story as to how she got her name is that she left to seek out adventure and her fortune and became a mercenary, earning the name Red because of all the blood that she spilled. Red Sonja, while not a traditional hero, pretty much always stands up to those who are cruel and corrupt, often fighting for those who are oppressed, even against her better judgment. She has even fought death before in combat and won, allowing her to live on when she was on the brink of death. Red Sonja was once a character from the Marvel Comics wheelhouse, but currently calls Dynamite Comics her home. Number 7, Vampirella, but you can call her Vampy. Vampirella isn't a conventional hero by any means, but she definitely tries to do what's best by folks while still being a vampire from outer space, and at the same time with ties to Lilith and Hell. Overall, she's both complicated and also kinda super simple, and it's that weird blend of those two very different elements that I love about her. Vampy, being an intergalactic vampire, is super strong, fast, can fly because she actually has wings, and also has been shown to have access to advanced technology at times due to her ties to the planet Draculon. Vampirella is currently attached to Dynamite Comics but was originally a property of Warren Publishing. Number 6. Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon is a popular hero as far as the lesser known or indie heroes go, so if you haven't heard of him before, you might want to check him out. Initially, his origins were a mystery. All we knew was that he was a humanoid, green-skinned, dragon-like character who decided to fight as a police officer and hero, fighting against the criminal and mutant super freaks of Chicago. That's also in part because Savage Dragon initially had really bad amnesia in the comics, so he didn't actually even remember his own origin story at the time. Savage Dragon hails from Image Comics and was originally introduced as simply Dragon before being known under the mantle of Savage Dragon. His powers include super strength and super healing. Number 5. Witchblade. Witchblade is a hero who comes from Top Cow Productions. Mainly we've known Witchblade as Sarah Pizzini, but the Witchblade has belonged to many other powerful women throughout the years. The Witchblade is an ancient mystical artifact that typically binds itself to a host who can then wield and use its powers at will. It can be more or less powerful depending on the host, but in this case, since Sarah is one of the most well-known hosts of the Witchblade, we're gonna basically base the ranking on her abilities. The Witchblade can be used to summon mystical armor, which can cover the entirety of its host's body, though typically most are not skilled enough to actually summon that much armor, and instead are usually only covered in little pieces of armor as a result. Hence why you see that Witchblade art and she's like, not really covered in much. This armor grants the wearer invulnerability, but even if its host is harmed, it also grants the power to heal. Aside from creating armor, the Witchblade can also be used to create weapons on the fly. It also increases its host's strength and endurance. Sarah herself was also a trained NYPD detective prior to becoming the host for the Witchblade, so she also brings her skills as an officer and detective to the table. Number 4. Luther Strode. Luther Strode is the main character in the Strange Talent of Luther Strode series, a series that hails from Image Comics. Luther ends up acquiring powers that enhance his strength, durability, speed, and combat skills after receiving a mail order exercise program known as the Hercules Method. Luther's powers, however, only create more harm than good in his life and lead to a lot of death, much of it happening as a result of his own involvement. Try as he might to try and do good with it. While not a conventional hero, Luther definitely fits the bill of an anti-hero, or more accurately tragic hero archetype, with everything going awry no matter his intent. He's also someone I would personally love to see take on the hero who made our number 2 spot. Number 3. Radiant Black. Radiant Black is Nathan Burnett, or was Nathan Burnett. Nathan to start, anyways. Going to try not to spoil this series because it's one that I think we should all be reading, so I'm just gonna leave it at Nathan for now. Radiant Black is the first hero we meet in this series. In issue number 1, Nathan ends up getting the powers of the Black Radiant, which basically means he has the powers of a black hole. Radiant Black can manipulate gravity and also becomes super dense with this power set. The downside for this hero is being new means that he's pretty inexperienced in the comics thus far. However, gravity manipulation as a power set is insane, which is how he ranks so high up on this list despite his inexperience. Radiant Black hails from Image Comics, and like I said, if you have not checked out this series and gotten to know the Radiants yet, well, you definitely need to change that, and you need to do so. It's like Power Rangers, but possibly cooler, and I say that having much respect and much love for Power Rangers. So that's not a snub at all, it's just like, it's really good. Number 2. Bulletproof. You know Invincible, but do you know Bulletproof? Fans of the comic series likely do, but if you just became an Invincible fan via the animated series, then this isn't a character that you'd be familiar with just yet. After all, at this point we've only had 1 season so far, so it's very likely Bulletproof will appear in the series, just not until a bit later on. Bulletproof is Zandel Rudolph. He got his powers as a result of his brother using him as basically a science experiment, as his brother Tyrone was actually obsessed with superpowers. Zandel would end up getting powers as a result of this mad science, while his brother would end up dead. Bulletproof also goes on to take up the Invincible mantle at one point, filling in for Mark when he is off-world. Zandel's powers are based on energy absorption, which I think is one of the strongest power sets to have personally. Bulletproof, like other heroes in the Invincible universe, comes to us from Skybound, which is an imprint of Image Comics. Number 1. The Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient elemental force that takes up residence in a host, granting them special powers. One of the most famous hosts that we have come to know as the Darkness is Jackie Estacado. The powers that Jackie wields are similar to what you'd expect from some kind of demonic force. They're also honestly comparable to Venom's power set from Marvel Comics, at least I see a lot of similarities there. The Darkness gives you access to a sort of mystical armor armor which can be summoned at will. It also grants the user a healing factor, shapeshift abilities, and through them also the ability to fly via wings that you can create. Jackie as the Darkness can also create dark tendrils which he can also turn into weapons, and he can also summon entities known as Darklings. While more of an anti-hero due to his methods, Jackie as Staccato is still a hero in the sense that he generally fights on the side of good. The Darkness hails from Top Cow Productions. And if you do know the Witchblade, you probably know the Darkness, or vice versa.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Giganta. Dora Zuul made her first appearance in Wonder Woman Volume 2, issue 126. She's a supersized villain. She's literally a giant, if her name didn't already tip you off for that. She was once suffering from a fatal blood disease, so in order to try and save herself, she attempted to transfer her life essence into the body of Wonder Woman, which I gotta say, great call. As far as vessels go, that's a pretty good one to use. Because Wonder Woman at this time was in a coma. She was being held at the experimental medical facility where Zuul was working, so kinda, it was worth a shot. Now during this process, Wonder Girl came in and interrupted it, so instead Zuul's life essence was transferred into a giant test gorilla named Giganta. I can't even say that with a straight face. So instead, Zuul's life essence was now transferred into a giant test gorilla named Giganta. Oops. Now of course this was a no-go, so her next idea was to transfer herself again, but this time to a strong circus lady named Olga. The transfer worked and Doris could now turn into a giant because Olga apparently could do so before. I think we're okay without giants. I think anything with giants we're just gonna keep out. If it doesn't have a cape, then no. That's it. Number 9, Psycho Pirate. Psycho Pirate. Charles Halstead made his first appearance in All-Star Comics issue 23. He first showed up in the golden age of comics. He was originally an employee of Rex Morgan, who ran a newspaper company called The Daily Career. He wanted more success, of course, so he made the alias Psycho Pirate, and he started to use emotions as a theme for crimes. That sounds intimidating, I think. So the Justice Society would solve crimes based on emotions. That doesn't sound too powerful for the DCEU. If anything, it sounds a little boring where we're heading now. The new Psycho Pirate came out in Superboy Volume 6, issue 23, and he was much different. Roger Hayden can now control emotions, which is a big upgrade. Psycho Pirate is aware that the universes have changed, like he saw the nature of reality die and then get reborn, like New Crisis, Flashpoint, all that good stuff. He was just stuck in the universe watching it all fold and then unfold again. The reality created by Dr. Manhattan's timeline tampering had Roger as a member of the 20, a group of Metropolis citizens infected with Brainiac's psionic virus. So now Hayden can alter your emotions using the Medusa mask. He's getting better and better. The first mask was an artifact stolen from the Metropolis Museum of Art. That mask gave him godly abilities, and we see this in Superman Volume 3, issue 24. Now the second mask used was from Batman Volume 3, and that mask was more of a tool to help him channel his own ability to change others' emotions. Medusa mask or Majora's mask? Which would you rather own? It's a close one. And before we continue on with this list, you know the drill. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you're loving this part 2, which you should be if you're still on board. Those likes surely add up and help us out here at the studio, so thank you so much. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Super Doom. Coming from Earth 45, this Superman was a project gone wrong. He first appeared in Action Comics Volume 2, issue 9, when Jimmy Olsen created a machine that turns thoughts into reality. All these thought machines and emotion machines, it's a bit odd, but I like it. So the gang decided to make a robot Superman next with that machine. They ended up selling this device to Overcorp, which made it into Superman: The Last Night of Tomorrow, aka the monstrous Super Doom. Overcorp used him to take over the planet, but still, that wasn't enough. Super Doom entered the bleed space, where he would then search the multiverse for its creators, destroying planets and other versions of Superman like Optiman of Earth 36 and Superman of Earth 42. But eventually he came to Earth 23 and had to go toe-to-toe with their Superman, President Calvin Harris. I'm all for evil Supermans in a nightmare sequence, but Super Doom might be a little bit too much. I don't know. Number 7, Relic. Ancient enemy of the Green Lantern Corps, Relic made his first appearance in Green Lantern Volume 5, issue 21. He's been around for a while, like before space-time. I'm talking like a while. Before all this, he was a scientist in his universe who believed that harnessing the emotional electromagnetic spectrum was a bad idea. He figured it would lead to tragedy, and given others on this list, I have to say, he was kind of onto something. So he thought all these other lightsmiths were drawing their power from a specific place, and eventually that place would run dry. Guy's a futurist, what can I say? So he searched the cosmos far and wide trying to prove his own theory, and he had universal support backing it. But nothing was jumping out at him. There was no solutions, he didn't really come across anything, until one by one the 7 core lightsmiths began losing their powers. The only living being left after that war was a lone green lightsmith. So Relic then passed to the next universe, and he was remade as a giant, kind of like Dor-Zul. We love giants. He was first found by White Lantern Kyle Rayner in the Templar Guardians. But he didn't want what happened to the Lightsmiths to happen here, so he traveled to Oa, where he warned the Green Lantern Corps that they should surrender their power rings. And they of course were like, no, get out of here, peace. And then in turn, Relic forcefully drained their powers and destroyed their planet. Either one way or another, I guess it's happening. Okay, Relic, sure. Number 6, Volthoom. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Annual Volume 5, Issue 1, Volthoom was an ancient force that had the ability to warp reality. Sweet. He was originally from Earth 15, and after his world was on the brink of destruction, so him and his mother used the newly discovered emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which is a multiversal force powered by all life in the multiverse, and then they used this power to create the Travel Lantern, and Volthoom left to find safety while his mother stayed behind and unfortunately, in superhero fashion, died right as he left. This first lantern traveled for weeks through space and time in desperate hopes to find something to save his home. So he goes to Earth 17 and he uses the spectrum to resurrect plant life, which is cool, but then next he travels to Earth 47 and they use the spectrum to create beautiful music, also pretty cool. And then he went to Earth 3 where he met a sorcerer named Mordu, in which he creates a power ring out of a piece of his soul, that ring of course being called the Ring of Volthoom. You're not going to name it after somebody else, so it's only fair. He finally found Earth 0 where he acted as the law and order. Eventually Volthoom's mind was corrupted from the spectrum and he became insane. I feel like anybody who has a ring in general just ends up going insane. Like Lord of the Rings, it's like, come on. Number 5, Atrocitus. What a name! Okay, he must be a gentle soul. Atrocitus entered DC Comics back in Green Lantern Volume 4, Issue 25. He is the leader and founder of the Red Lantern Corps, the red power ring fueled by nothing else but rage. So since the death of his family, he's been after the Guardians of the Universe. His family was residing in the ever so peaceful sector 666. Krona, one of the Guardians of the Universe who I talked about in part 1, reprogrammed Manhunters to extinguish life. So when they all went nuts, this was one of the many worlds destroyed. He was one of the 5 survivors left on Sector 666, so together they became the 5 Inversions. They soon became known as the Empire of Tears, which sounds like a punk rock boy band, but in reality they were performing rituals to see the future, like the Blackest Night Prophecy and stuff like that. Atrocitus created the Red Lantern Corps, but he's also really known for corrupting Sinestro. Number 4, Oblivion. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Issue 2 back in 2014, Oblivion is made of Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, and anxiety, all rolled into one. Lovely. He's the physical form of all those traits, and he even believed himself to be Kyle Rayner. He stayed at this guy's apartment and he even tricked Carol into thinking that he was the real deal. He has powers that allow him to shapeshift, obviously, but he can also teleport and project vast amounts of energy that match a white lantern. He can also create illusions of objects and people. He can make anything he wants. You're going to be very confused if you go on a dinner date with this guy. One day, Oblivion teleported Carol and himself to Arizona, where he used his powers to change everybody's appearance, and he even changed buildings all around him. No thanks, we don't want any of that in the DCEU. Sounds fun, but sounds kinda unfixable. Number 3, Mongul. The insane ruler of Warworld. Yeah, he's for sure making this list. He first appeared back in the 80s in DC Comics Presents Issue 27. He was a Superman villain who was exiled into outer space by his own people. A man called the Archimandrite came along, took it over, and from that point on the planet was just a cruel wasteland. Mongul drifted through space, and over his cosmic commute he picked up immense powers along the way until he eventually arrived on the 5th planet of the Cygnus system, where the Martian race protected the Crystal Key. The Crystal Key was the only way to gain access to the planet Warworld. So Mongul kidnapped Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and Steve Lombard in order to get Superman to punch those Martians out of the way. Martian Manhunter ended up freeing Superman's friends, but by the time everything was done, they were all so low energy that they still couldn't fight Mongul, so he got the key and teleported away. It took both Superman and Supergirl to destroy Warworld, but Mongul ended up escaping anyways. I think I like this guy, but he might be a bit too strong for the DCEU, but hey, never say never. Number 2, Kronos. If you do the crime, you're doing the time, but if you have enough time, you can plan said crime out in detail and maybe you won't even get caught for that crime. Confused? That's what time does. David Clinton first entered DC Comics with the Atom issue 3. He's mainly a villain for Ray Palmer. Now, he was a criminal his entire life, but finally he was arrested, thrown in the slammer where he had time to think. Maybe a bit too much time, because then he reflected on all of his past crimes and what he would have done differently had he planned it better. And he used his skills and obsessions with timepieces to work non-stop in the prison workshop. So he learned about Crocs, time, anything, the mechanisms within them, all that good stuff. And when his sentence was up, he was released and then became a time-traveling villain. He used time-inspired weapons, like literally, he used an exploding hourglass or a wristwatch filled with blades instead of hands, and he also had a device that could literally slow down time. And then he started going by the new name Kronos. In the DC animated universe, he used these devices to go back in time and steal rare relics from the past. At one point, he tried stealing a utility belt from the Justice League's watchtower, but when he was interrupted, he made a break for it through a time vortex, but Green Lantern, Batman, and Wonder Woman followed him back through there. We mentioned a time guy on part 1, so part 2, we gotta throw another one in. It's the law. And finally, number 1, Grail. We finally got to see Darkseid in the Snyder Cut, but is it too soon perhaps if we meet his daughter? Am I asking for too much? I don't know. She's pretty badass. She made her comic book debut in Justice League Volume 2 issue 40 back in 2015. She was born at the exact same time as Wonder Woman in Divergence issue 1. The Amazonian assassin Marina gave birth to Grail in secret with help from Penelope and Menelipe. Marina had to defend her child because Penelope heard the prophecy from Menelipe, so apparently this child would cause mass destruction when she grew up. Okay, sure. Marina took Menelipe out, so she wasn't really a concern anymore, but afterwards Marina left Themyscira with her daughter, making it the first time Amazons have left the island. In Justice League Volume 2, issue 40, Grail teamed up with the Anti-Monitor and declared war on her own father. Nice. Being a hybrid of an Amazon and a new god, she's got powers from both. It's quite intimidating. She's destroyed Wonder Woman's bracelets with Omega Beams, and she can travel through dimensions by locking onto those connected to the Speed Force. She can literally hitch a ride through time, so there's no winning this battle, either in the future or the past. Kicking off the list at number 10, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. Now, he's not that easy to forget once you take a glimpse at him, because he's kind of terrifying in every way. He's also obsessed with experimenting on mutants, and yes, that includes himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but he felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. Doesn't that sound lovely? It's off the bat. He couldn't get funding from the Hellfire Club, so he got together a group that he named the Marauders, and then he got them to kidnap people off the streets of London so he can then experiment on them. So dark already, the guy is twisted. He even tried to experiment on his son, who was no longer alive. This guy may be a little bit too twisted for the MCU, but he does bring back dead characters, so maybe he's a blessing in disguise. Number 9, Blastar. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 62, Blastar once was the ruler of Balur, a planet in the negative zone. The inhabitants of said planet were not a fan of this horrible ruling, so they voted him off the island. They revolted and sent him adrift into the cosmos. Now, during that field trip in space, he bumped into Mr. Fantastic, who at that point was already on his way back to Earth with the Inhuman Triton. So Blastar followed them through the portal, teamed up with Sandman, and fought the Fantastic Four. He ended up losing this battle and was sent back to his own dimension, which sounds like a win, but this was only the beginning. He then became king once again, but this time he expanded his territory. It also helped that this time around he stole Annihilus' cosmic control rod. This guy is pretty hardcore, and at one point in the comics, he tried to collect all the Infinity Stones before Thanos. Somebody tell Blastar he's a little bit too late for the MCU. And before we continue on with this list, you know the drill. If you're loving the content, or if you want a part 3, or if you're just liking the curls so far, give us a thumbs up. It really helps us out quite a bit, and then in turn, we can give you back as much as we can. You're the best, thank you so much. Right back to this list. Number 8, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness spawned by the first nightmare. Doesn't that sound nice already? Sick. Amal Farouk was the leader of the underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter in Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happens to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him. It's pretty terrifying. He feeds on the shadows of your soul. So yeah, with Marvel veering off into the cosmic side of things, maybe we could see a Shadow King whenever the X-Men come into the picture. Now in the comics, before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. So maybe he's been there the whole time. I kind of hope he's not though, because he's terrifying. Number 7, the Fallen One. First appearing in Thanos issue 11, the Fallen One was once a Herald of Galactus, who of course we mentioned in part 1. Now the difference between later Heralds of Galactus, this Fallen One was empowered by dark energy instead of cosmic radiation, which was the norm. So in turn, he was quite cruel. He was evil enough that Galactus himself had to imprison him. The Fallen One was also a sneaky one. He would often escape and then re-attack Galactus all over again. It was a vicious circle until Star-Lord came in and imprisoned the Fallen One into the Klin, that prison we see in the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now when the Klin was later destroyed during a conflict with Thanos and the Maker, the Fallen One again broke free, went back to Galactus, but this time Galactus teleported him back to Thanos. He's like, no, you go fight him, Mr. Crazy Guy, get out of here. Thanos ended up defeating him, but only because he tricked the Fallen One into igniting a gas giant. At this point, Thanos made him become a herald for himself, right? Might as well. The Fallen One can control black matter, which is a pretty big deal. He can use that matter to enhance his own speed, strength, durability, you name it. You wouldn't see him coming either, because he can travel at the same speed of light. Now we just got Thanos out of the MCU, so let's never bring back his herald either. No thanks. Number 6, Spiral. Rita Wayward made her debut in Longshot issue 1. She's actually a loyal servant to the spineless Mojo that we mentioned in part 1 of this list. But it didn't always start that way, of course not. See, Ricochet Rita was once a professional stunt performer. She became friends with a guy named Longshot who was already from that Mojoverse. She was actually attacked by this insane version of herself called Spiral from the future. They fought, she won, and she thought that was the end of that problem. Now you gotta remember that, because it's for sure not the end. Rita actually decided to follow her heart and go back to that Mojoverse with her new boy toy, Longshot. And then when they get there, they're both captured by Mojo. Longshot's mind was wiped, now forgetting Rita, which is so sad already. But for Rita, it just gets worse. Mojo got his scientists to modify her mentally and physically, so now she has 6 arms, and her hair is also gray, and now, oh, she can also see other dimensions. She was like a twisted little version of Mojo, and she got trained in the dark arts of magic and body modification. And as you may have guessed, that future version of her was just that. Mojo sent her new and improved self to go back in time and attack her past self. It's just a nice loop of trouble. Number 5, Kid Omega. Quentin Quire made his first appearance in X-Men issue 134. He's been described as one of the most powerful telepaths right next to Jean Grey, and believe it or not, he was once also the host of the Phoenix Force. In his early super days, Quentin was one of Xavier's prize pupils, you know, until he put together the Omega Gang. He wasn't always a bad kid though. It's just on his birthday, when he was still young, he received a call from his parents to say that he was adopted. And honestly, if I got that gift on my birthday, I'd probably turn evil too. I don't blame the kid. This Omega Gang likes to handle humans the way that they feel like, you know, with violence and mutant monologues. He's been described as an Omega level telepath and telekinetic, so if mutants are too much for the MCU right now, Kid Omega surely won't be around for quite a while. Number 4, Overmind. First appearing in Fantastic Four issue 113, Overmind, aka Grom, was an Eternal born on the planet Young. He was a fierce gladiator whose job it was to prevent overpopulation. He conquered hundreds of worlds, he won thousands of fights, and he took out entire species. He's the champion of champions. Literally, the Eternals held the games to test everybody to see who the most powerful was, and Grom was the winner. He's the ultimate physical specimen of the Eternals, and part of me wants to meet him in the next Eternals movie, and part of me doesn't want to know what conquering planets and thousands of souls looks like either. Let's keep this guy in the books, definitely. Number 3, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. When Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, they were all under fire, so they had to run and take cover in a nearby cave. Now the cave was actually home to the lost temple of Cyttorak. So just who is this Cyttorak guy? And also, nice temple by the way. Cyttorak is a powerful entity that is both a god and a demon. Best of both worlds, lovely. He was worshipped on Earth way back in the day, but was eventually banished to the Crimson Cosmos. Cyttorak's gem contained all of its power, so when Kane stumbled stumbled across it and then decided to read the inscription, "Whoever touches this gem shall possess the power of the crimson bands of Cyttorak. Henceforth, you who read these words shall become forevermore a human juggernaut." And then Kane turned into just that. Now we have Ryan Reynolds coming over from the Foxverse into the MCU, and I doubt they would bring over such a high caliber character like Juggernaut as well. He might be a little bit too soon for that. He would literally rip the Avengers apart also. We see Doctor Strange summon the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak in Infinity War while the team is fighting Thanos on Titan, so never say never. Number 2, Proteus. Kevin McTaggart was the son of Moira McTaggart and her husband Joseph. Now the marriage was the opposite of healthy. Joseph was a mentally and physically, and just an all-around horrible human being. So Moira got out of there. She didn't even tell Joseph that she was pregnant. The less he knows, the better, honestly. Just move on, get out of Dodge. So young Kevin and Moira soon lived together at her mutant research center off the coast of Scotland. Now Kevin, as he got older, manifested mutant abilities, so now he has this uncontrollable need for power. He craved it, literally. So Moira had to hide him. She had to keep him locked up in a cell for years and only referred to him as Mutant X, which is kind of a dark nickname already off the bat. I mean, sure, could have just still called him Kevin, but great. She wanted to keep him safe and also not have strangers get the soul sucked out of them on their way to work. So that's a bonus, keep him tucked below. But one day while Magneto was fighting the X-Men, Kevin's cell was damaged and he got out. Since the isosteric energy in his cell was no longer holding him back, Kevin was able to take down Polaris, Multiple Man, and he was even able to evade the Phoenix. But after doing so, his body began to burn out, just like Moira tried to prevent all this time. So now the only solution he has was to possess human hosts, one after another. He renamed himself Proteus, with his imagination the only thing that limits his powers. He's made of psionic energy, and he too can warp reality. Every time he possesses a new host, he gets stronger and stronger and stronger, until eventually the host burns out, and then he warps to possess another poor soul. And finally, number 1, Amora the Enchantress. She made her first debut back in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and her relationship with Thor is... honestly, I'd kind of love to see this in live action, but I feel like we're quite far from this type of power in the MCU. So half the time she wants to take out Thor, and the other half she's trying to take him out to dinner. It's really a love-hate relationship. Now, Amora has a pretty sweet life before all this. She's got multiple mansions throughout all the 9 realms, and can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even on a bad day, she's still getting rich. She's really good at seducing people as well. I mean, it's literally her superpower. For example, Scourge, she would seduce him into helping her with evil plans, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you bet, anything for you, you're so hot, let's do it." And then afterwards, Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just continue to play hard to get. She messes with your mind and your heart. That's a double whammy. One kiss is all it takes for her to completely own you and your soul. In the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster because the whole, loving on different worlds thing is long distance, I guess. That's a no-go for the God Squad. But when she tried to attack Jane, Thor intervened and she was banished to Earth by Odin, where she then joined the Masters of Evil. Now, she doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because, well, she doesn't really need it. She just gets other lovers to fight her fights for her. The Bachelorette in space. Nice, tune in, love it. Kicking off the list at number 10, Matthew Malloy. While we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of mutants into the MCU, there's quite a few mutants that I wouldn't want hanging out near Peter, Ned, or MJ, like Matthew Malloy, for example. See, Matthew was a regular Joe living in Charleston, South Carolina, but all of a sudden Earth gets hit with a Skrull invasion. Gotta love Mondays in the Marvel Universe, sick. Things escalate when his wife Jules is vaporized by a blast from said Skrull ship, and his home was also just toast. Just a complete tragedy from the start. Now, one depressing, dark, lonely year later, he sees his late wife's sister, and they finally catch up. And it's hard for Matthew, of course, to talk about this stuff. This is still just a year ago, so it's all very fresh. So he's feeling it, and that's when his mutant powers decided to manifest. He erupted with energy, sadly also ending the life of Jules' sister. Not looking good so far. And then while he's standing there in shock, Maria Hill's hologram shows up out of a drone, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you a mutant? What are your powers? What's going on? Do you have Geico?" He's a little stressed out on what's happening, so he freaks out a little more. So she sends in a strike team, and this just caused him to release even more energy and take even more lives. S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up sending in an airstrike, and that ended the lives of Cyclops, Magik, and Matthew, but those powers were better than we thought, because Matthew came back to life. Immortality for the win. Next, he teleported to the Jean Grey school, where he then took the life of Emma Frost. Now, Tempest at this point decided the only way to take care of this beyond Omega level threat was to go back in time and make sure his parents never meet. Then we can avoid having this supervillain from exploding over and over again. There's a link there, page 10. Mutants are cool and all, but this is evidence of how a regular guy can be riddled with tragedy in the Marvel Universe. Imagine if Zemo got these powers, Civil War would be over in like 22 minutes. Number 9, Molecule Man. Owen Reese started his days out as a small, puny, ridiculously looking laboratory technician whose life changed forever one day at work. Also, that's how the Watcher described him. I'm not being mean. He's breaking down his origins to the Fantastic Four, and he's low-key roasting the guy the entire time. It's pretty great. He was working for Acme Atomic Corp, but one day he got distracted and made a mistake while making adjustments to that atomic machine. He was distracted because he was monologuing about how much his life sucks. He was like, oh, I'm just a nobody wearing green pants at work, boo-hoo, no one knows my name. And then in the middle of his pity party, he gets blasted with energy, but somehow he survives. His boss of 12 years calls him in the office and he's like, hey, I heard about your accident, Mr. whatever your name is. We can't have that happen here. You're fired. Which, first of all, as far as lawsuits go, could you imagine? But Owen doesn't pack up and leave. No, instead, he pulls out a wand that can control his powers and he turns Boss Man into a snow cone. He can now control every molecule in the universe, and like Reed Richards says, if a man can control molecules, he can control anything. Guy's really brilliant with that groundbreaking assessment. Thanks, Reed. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It's a lot of dark, tragic stuff going on here, so let's brighten the mood a little bit by doing a little hitting that button. Thanks so much, you guys are the best. Back to this list. Number 8, Mad Jim Jaspers. Old Jimmy J, okay, he made his first appearance in Daredevil's number 7 back in 1983. He was created by Alan Davis and Alan Moore, and when he first hit the pages, he was a British politician serving as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He was serving as a member of Parliament for Haslope West, and he wasn't a fan of superheroes either. He wanted to keep Britain safe, and superheroes crashing through buildings and punching each other in the back, no thanks. Sounds like the opposite of safety. They're old school, I get it. But he also wasn't alone. Many others agreed with him, and in turn, he won a general election. Only 2 issues after he's introduced, we find out he's a mutant with reality warping powers, who of course is also insane. He was just taking out other heroes so that he could rule secretly. Classic little twisty twist. He created and used this machine called the Fury, which hunted down superhumans. Meanwhile, he would be off committing crimes with his Alice in Wonderland themed gang. I know Disney loves crossovers, but I think this would be a little too weird. Number 7, Mephisto. In a list of villains too powerful for the MCU, clearly Mephisto is on that list. We thought he was going to be the one pulling the strings in WandaVision, but as the catchy theme song revealed, it was Agatha Harkness all along. Mephisto made his first full appearance in Silver Surfer issue 3, and he's been making deals with everybody since. Like when Spider-Man revealed his identity in the Civil War storyline, that led to a bullet striking Aunt May, so he offers Peter a deal while Aunt May is dying in the hospital. The world will forget Peter Parker is truly Spider-Man, but in turn Mephisto gets his marriage. It's kind of like Shrek 4, but way more fun. And this movie's probably gonna make way more money than Shrek 4. I mean, maybe, hopefully, I hope. You don't even need to be a superhero to have an eventful night with Mephisto either. Like in Journey into Mystery issue 627, he would show up to a random pub and he tells the bartender a story, and if you listen to his tale, he'll give you a nice fat tip. But if you slip up, things can get pretty ugly. Next time you get that really annoying regular at your bar, just think, it could literally be the devil and be a lot worse. Consider yourself lucky. Number 6, Vulcan. The younger brother of both Cyclops and Havoc, Gabriel Summers made his first appearance in X-Men Deadly Genesis. Before Catherine Summers even had a chance to give birth to the 3rd child, he was transferred into an incubation accelerator, so he grew up real quick. After this, he was sent to Earth to work for Eric the Red, but luckily he didn't stick around to let that happen too long. He changed his name quickly from Gabriel to Kid Vulcan, which sounds way cooler already, but was also inspired by Roman mythology. I guess the other names already belong to DC characters. But Xavier eventually met him, and because of his mental powers, he knew that this boy was a relative to the Summers family. Vulcan had forgotten about his history at this point as well, but he suited up with Petra, Darwin, and Sway, and together they rescued the original X-Men. It wasn't easy though. Cyclops thought Vulcan had died when the island decided to fight back. Vulcan is an Omega level mutant, and he's also insane. What a jazzy combo. Vulcan can manipulate, absorb, and control energy. This includes Cyclops' optic blasts or even Adam Warlock's energy. And of course, interstellar flight makes those cosmic commutes nice and smooth. Number 5, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in turn Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which I've mentioned on other lists before because that's one of the more painful encounters I've ever seen in comic books. His healing factor then had to work overtime, and Xavier at this point decided it would be the right move to just shut Magneto's mind down, so then he made him catatonic. But during this exact moment, all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' subconscious, creating this new personality, Onslaught. Onslaught is quite lucky, because now he gets to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane, where he can manipulate matter and energy. I mean, let's get X-Men into the MCU first, and then we'll start talking about evil mashups and swaps. Number 4, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. Just like the team over here at Top 10 Nerd, the more views he gets for this interdimensional TV show, the more powerful he gets as well. So if you didn't hit that like button, now you really have to. So in the 1992 issue titled Mojo's Media Madness, he had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine, and they all think that they're characters from The Wizard of Oz. It sounds fun, but for the MCU this would be way too stupid, dare I say. The comic is crazy enough. I mean, we see his madness really unfold in X-Men issue 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings, and they're from a planet named after him called Mojo World inside of a pocket dimension called Mojoverse. It's just all about him, eh? Wow. So this race of spineless beings were also slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from other space-time continuums like ours were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer. We're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go. We'll stick to watching these guys on our TV rather than having them sucked into a interdimensional Netflix, you know? That sounds better. Number 3, Apocalypse. Making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue 17 and then making his first full appearance in X-Factor issue 5, Apocalypse was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked different. He had the Blue Man Group Avatar vibe going on, so they left the child. How mean. Later on, he was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive. So already such a tragic childhood. Now in the desert, along came Baal of the Crimson Sands, leader of the Sandstormers, and he saw this kid crying and he also saw potential, because clearly he was different. So he named him Ansabanur, which translates to Morning Light. He grew up becoming the most feared in the land, and eventually Baal led him to Ramatut's time ship in an underground tomb. Now Baal didn't survive this cave expedition, but Nur was now determined to be anything but an abused worker. Now he wanted revenge on Ramatut, the pharaoh ruler. And after being thrown into a pit of snakes, Nur grew in size and strength, easily defeating all the guards before finally declaring himself Apocalypse. We had this guy already in the Foxverse, but it didn't feel too great. I think we should let that wound heal a bit before bringing him into the MCU with the X-Men. Maybe like 8 years, then we'll talk. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. We see this happen a little bit in the MCU. So enter Project MODOK, yes, spelled with a C at the end instead of a K. That's important, you gotta remember that. MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. It sounds like a high-tech series, sounds perfect. What a great way to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. That's when things start to go south, obviously. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. Already this is downhill. This scientist did not know that with great power comes great responsibility, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad in the new Avengers game that's not too good, but it's still worth a play, and yes, he's as crazy as it sounds. And finally, number 1, Galactus. Wielder of the power cosmic, this one has to eat planets in order to survive. Yummy. We saw him in Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Well, I mean, we saw a cloud that sort of looked like him, I guess. Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Let's talk about him. The Great Destroyer made his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 48. He's the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. But originally, he was a humanoid named Galan, born on a previous version of Earth called Planet Ta. It was a paradise whose civilization was much more advanced than any other in the universe at the time, which sounds quite lovely. But when the cosmos Cosmos were soon ending the embodiment of the sixth infinity, the sentience of the multiverse approached Galan and merged with him. So now Galactus resides in the seventh iteration of his universe, which is home to our Earth 616. He's extremely powerful. He once ate all the Infinity Stones, so maybe we'll just keep them hidden in Casey's office desk for now, just to be safe.
And it's Midnighter. Midnighter, alongside his future husband Apollo, was part of the top secret Stormwatch team created by the first weatherman, Henry Bendix. Nobody but Bendix himself knew of the team's existence. Bendix built them as superhumans, and when they donned their costumes and spoke their code names, their previous identities ceased to exist. Midnighter has the power to predict how a situation will happen before it starts. This allows him to run through a given situation millions of times in his mind, instantly covering every possible result before his first move is even made. He uses this information to predict the actions and or reactions of others, counteracting their moves almost before they even think to make them, effectively making Midnighter the greatest tactician in the history of mankind. Basically the good guy version of the Thinker. That's pretty cool. He could be Batman just because he knew every single way it would happen. And at 9, the Atomic Knight. The Atomic Knights appeared in every third issue of Strange Adventures in the early 1960s, beginning with number 117 and running through number 160. In all, there were 15 early 1960s Atomic Knight stories created by writer John Broome and artist Murphy Anderson. They were a band of heroes living in and protecting the post-apocalyptic future of 1992. Yep, at that point it was the future. Following the catastrophic Hydrogen War of 1986. A petty tyrant named the Black Baron ruled a small section of the Midwestern United States with an iron fist. He was opposed by Sergeant Gardner Grail of the Atomic Knights, who wore medieval suits of armor that were impervious to the Baron's energy weapons, the armor having been irradiated in the war. Gardner Grail also has precognition, and wears a suit of armor that grants him enhanced speed, strength, endurance, and lets him blast energy, as well as being adaptable to other technology. And at 8, Akrita. Andrea's father was Bernardo Rojas, once a renowned leader in Central America who researched pre-Hispanic cultures at a university in Mexico. She lived alone with her cat named Zapata, named after one of the revolutionary leaders in Mexico. Akrita specialized in striking against organized crime. Every time she caught a perpetrator or helped avert a tragedy, she cited a literary quotation, or if she had the time, painted graffiti insulting or challenging the local authorities, which might hint at her being a bit of an anarchist, which honestly I'm kinda into. This character seemed to be kind of a Mexican Batman, and despite her anarchist tendencies, she often worked with another two Mexican superheroes, Iman and El Muerto. Together with these two allies and Superman, she once saved Mexico and the world from the total destruction from a bad guy group trying to channel the powers inherent to the ley lines of Earth to accomplish their goals. So good on ya, Andrea. Good on you. And at 7, Jack-O-Lantern. The first Jack-O-Lantern is Daniel Cormack of Ireland, who was born to a poor farmer who was granted a magical lantern by an Irish fairy. Yep, that's how we're going with this. Cormac is a member of the Global Guardians, an international group of superheroes. His first recorded mission in Super Friends number 8 was to help Green Lantern dismantle a bomb in Ireland. Both Daniel Cormack and Marvin Noronza, the second Jack-O-Lantern, have a mystical lantern that gives them the power of flight, flame projection, teleportation, illusion casting, enhanced strength, and the ability to just create fogs. The power of the lantern is also its weakest at noon and gradually increases until its peak at midnight. Liam McHugh, the third Jack-O-Lantern, found a way to internalize the powers of the mystical lantern and no longer needs to carry it. So yeah. And at 6, Apollo. Essentially the Wildstorm universe's answer to Superman, Apollo is now technically a part of the DC superhero universe, like Wildstorm ever since the two universes converged following the events of Flashpoint. Apollo possesses many of the same powers as Superman, but with a few notable differences. Like Kal-El, Apollo possesses superhuman strength, flight, and near invulnerability. If you want some clarification as to just how impervious to damage he is, he's able to walk on the surface of the sun. Apollo also has the ability to shoot lasers from his eyes, derived from solar energy, but unlike Superman, he can also release this energy from other parts of his body, including his hands and mouth. This dude can fire lasers from his mouth. He uses hyper beam in real life. His only real weakness is that he relies on the sun for his powers, so if he doesn't get enough exposure, his powers will diminish, but hey, at least Apollo isn't vulnerable to kryptonite. Halfway through into number 5, Swamp Thing. In a secret facility located in the Louisiana swamplands, scientist Alec Holland and his wife Linda invented a bio-restorative formula that would solve any nation's food shortage problem. problems. Ferret and Bruno, thugs working for Nathan Ellery, barged into Alec's lab, knocked him out, and planted a bomb in the facility. Alec woke up just as the bomb exploded, and in the flames he ran into the swamp. His body had been drenched in the biorestorative formula, and this affected the plant life of the swamp, imbuing it with Alec's consciousness and memories. The newly conscious plant life then formed a semblance of a human form and rose up from the bog as the Swamp Thing, the latest in a long line of earth elementals created when the green was in need of protection. His body is composed of sentient vegetable matter. He has the ability to nourish himself, superhuman strength, elemental control, chlorokinesis, astral projection, biofission, immortality, regeneration, size alteration, resurrection, you name it, and Swampy can do it. Swampy, away! And in 4, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle was scot-free, the god of escape in the New Gods mythology. A Genesian raised on Apokolips, he defected with his lover Big Barda to Earth, where he used the skills he learned in Escapology, both as a performance artist and in the Justice League of America. Originally, the boy scot-free was the son of High Father Isaiah, the ruler of New Genesis. However, as a part of a diplomatic move to stop a destructive war against the planet Apokolips, High Father agreed to an exchange of children with his enemy Darkseid. In doing so, he surrendered scot-free to the care of his enemy while he received his enemy's son Orion. This guy has new god physiology, okay, making him immortal, super strength, super durable, and giving him super agility. Plus, when utilizing his full godly potential, Mr. Miracle wields a cosmic energy field called Alpha Effect, which allows him to transverse through time and space, heal living beings, fully restore creatures back from death, and control energy to an almost boundless degree. Yep, you're on the list. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Jem, son of Saturn. After both his mother and teacher were killed by the White Martians, Jem stole a ship and escaped to Earth, in search of his lover Syra, who had fled there earlier. He arrives in Harlem, New York and is befriended by an orphan named Luther Mankin. After a series of adventures with and without Luther, Jem eventually found Syra. They all then traveled to New Bok, a red Saturnian colony, but because he refused to take sides in his civil war on New Bok, Jem was disavowed and cast out by both factions. Dispirited, Jem and Luther returned to Earth, and given that Jem is a form of Martian in a sense, his Saturnian physiology gives him flight, metamorphosis, physiokinesis, telekinesis, telepathy, energy projection, superhuman durability, superhuman stamina, and superhuman strength that allows him to match Martian Manhunter blow for blow. So I think this is a pretty worthy number 3. Penultimately, in at number 2, Karate Kid. Karate Kid is actually Val Armour, a superhero from the future and also a member of the Legion of Superheroes. He is a master of every form of martial arts to have ever been developed by the 30th century. The extent of his skill was so great that he could severely damage various types of hard material with a single blow, and was briefly able to hold his own against Superboy through the use of what he called super karate. So he already seems pretty legit. Val Armour was the son of Japanese greatest crime lord Kiaru Nezumi, also known as the Black Dragon. When he was born, his mother, an American secret agent known as Valentina Armour, tried to hide him from his father, but she failed to do so and was killed for her affront. Japan's biggest hero, Sensei Toshiaki, and the White Crane, eventually killed the Black Dragon for his crimes and then adopted the infant Val. He raised Val as if he were his own son and trained him in all manner of martial arts. Val became the youngest warrior ever to earn the title of samurai, and he went on to work for his local shogun. However, after trying his best and failing to please his supervisor, he quit and searched the galaxy for new forms of battle to master. That just goes to show you, people, appreciate your employees, otherwise they're gonna quit and go search the galaxy for new forms of martial arts, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Blue Beetle. Jamie Reyes was a relatively normal high school student from El Paso, Texas. His father ran a garage and his mother was a paramedic, and he had a little sister who was a total brat. Jamie hung out with his 2 best friends, Brenda and Paco, and he acted as like the mediator between the hardworking Brenda and the laid-back Paco. By both Brenda and Paco's accounts, he was a good friend, the kind of person who could just let them be themselves and would always make things better. Jamie aimed to help his father out in the garage, but Alberto turned him down, not wanting to see his son grow up too fast. Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle, had come into possession of the Blue Beetle Scarab, the artifact which had given Dan Garrett, the first Blue Beetle, his powers. The Scarab had been presumed destroyed early in Ted's superhero career, but it was discovered intact in a pyramid in the Middle East. This is where Jamie gets his powers as well. What are those powers, you ask? The Scarab can and will use its powers of its own accord. Jamie, however, can override the Scarab if need be, and should Jeremy fall prey to mind-altering power, the Scarab will take control of the armor. So it will act on its own, and basically he's not mind control anymore because it's just the Scarab doing it, not actually him. Starting us off in at number 10, Lobo the Duck. Lobo the Duck is strangely enough the combination of Lobo and Donald Duck. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's Howard the Duck. And was introduced in Lobo the Duck #1 from 1997 and is present on Earth 9602, but in a timeline where the Amalgam heroes have died. Lobo the Duck is a fearless and strangely muscular, especially for a duck, anti-hero bounty hunter who, along with his shape-shifting canine sidekick Impossible Dog, is investigating the murders of several Amalgam Comics heroes. Lobo only agrees to find the murderers of these heroes if he gets paid up front though, but soon begins the investigation. Lobo fights his way through Gold Kidney Lady, Dr. Bongface, and various other supervillains before he realizes that the end of the world is about to begin and only he can stop it. He has all of Lobo's powers and abilities, including immortality, super strength, and a mastery of basically every weapon. He also has a genius level intellect, a superhuman sense of smell, can track anyone or anything across galaxies, and is a master of Quack Fu. Yeah, I just wanted an excuse to mention this guy, but honestly immortality makes him pretty damn powerful. And at 9, Pharaoh Man. Pharaoh Man is a combination of Colossus and Pharaoh Lad, and was introduced in X-Patrol #1, which is clearly a combination of X-Men and Doom Patrol. Peter and his twin Alexi were all each other had, since even their mother couldn't bear to look at their faces. That's not even a face a mother could love. The twins shared everything from the moment they were born, but one day while saving Alexi's life from an oncoming truck, Peter changed into living metal, stopping it, revealing to himself that he was actually a metamutant, but Alexi was unfortunately not. Alexi's growing resentment drove him away from his brother until eventually he left Peter alone. After this, Peter was recruited by Niles Cable, a mysterious traveler from the future, to join the X-Patrol. In their first appearance in X-Patrol #1, Pharaoh Man and his metamutant teammates became involved in the siege of Latkovia against Dr. Doomsday, a combination of Dr. Doom and Doomsday, which already sounds like Bad News Bears. He has all the powers of Colossus but can change into this form at will, like Pharaoh Lad. And at 8, Harold Stark. Harold Stark is a combination of Iron Man and Green Lantern, and was introduced in Iron Lantern #1 in 1997. While making modifications to a stationary flight simulator, suddenly the simulator took off with Hal still inside. It seemed to be drawn to a crashed alien spaceship, but the simulator quickly lost power and crashed as well, but only yards from that spaceship. The crash left Hal in bad shape, with jagged metal piercing his chest, but nevertheless he made his way to that spaceship. That's resilience, where he found the corpse of an alien. In an effort to keep himself alive though, Hal used the alien technology in the ship to make a suit powered by the alien battery inside, which Hal noted looked remarkably like a lantern. Wearing this armor, Hal fought off the aliens who had shot down Romancer's ship, but was also seen by others, being called the Iron Lantern by the media. The suit of armor not only allowed him to survive, but gave him incredible powers, allowing him to create any object he pleased out of green energy, due to the battery he used being powered by the living planet. Iron Lantern has the technical and genius level intellect of Tony Stark, but has all the powers of Green Lantern, which is pretty damn cool. And at 7, Dinah Prince. Dinah Prince, also known as Dinah of Themyscira, was first introduced in Bullets and Bracelets #1 and is a combination of Wonder Woman and Elektra. While still young, Dinah left Themyscira to explore man's world, leaving behind her family and her adopted sister Ororo. On her travels, she worked for the King of Wakanda, who gifted her adamantium bracelets. However, she later left to set up her own freelancing business in the US. There she met Trevor Castle and the two got married. At least, they were married until their infant son Ryan was mysteriously killed and the emotional toll was too much. Both of them blamed themselves for not being able to save their son. They seemed to never plan on meeting again. However, Monarch brought the two together again and pitted them against Thanoside, a combination of Thanos and Darkseid. Yeah, he had perceived the Lord of Apocalypse was responsible for the fate of their son, but she discovered that Ryan was not dead, merely displaced in time, and had grown up to become Kanto. Knowing that their son was still alive, Dinah and Trevor seemed to restart their relationship. Dinah has the divine empowerment from Wonder Woman, giving her superhuman strength and durability, as well as a mastery over archery and hand-to-hand combat. And at 6, Logan Wayne. Logan Wayne is a combination of, obviously, Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3, the same issue where this universe was created. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' murder at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Forces. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X Project, the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X Project was terminated due to his failure. Because because Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he had a conscience. But this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all know is something to fear. Halfway through and at number 5, Robert Bruce Banner. Robert Bruce Banner is the combination of Bruce Banner and understandably Solomon Grundy, and was first introduced in Doctor Strange Fate #1 as one of his aides. Bruce Banner was a scientist experimenting with radiation, when an experiment he was working on went horribly wrong. However, it fused him with the elemental entity known as Solomon Grundy. The fusion between Banner and Grundy became only known as the Skulk, and after a confrontation with Doctor Strange Fate, the Doc showed Skulk that he could keep him in his human form with use of magic. So in an effort to stay human, or at least be able to become human again, Skulk agreed to work as an agent for Doctor Strange Fate in return for the Doc keeping him in his human form, for most of the time. Skulk possesses all the powers and abilities of both Solomon Grundy and Hulk, and thanks to Doctor Strange Fate, Banner can shapeshift between his human form and his Skulk form at will, and since he possessed the same powers as Grundy, when he dies, he's reborn. But that's not even the craziest thing in this universe. And in 4, Blaze Allen. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon #1, is, aside from what you might have called your ex to your girlfriends, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. Yes, there are actually multiple Speed Demons. The demon component, Etrigan, was also formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. You know, Jay Garrick. Earth 2 Flash. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect souls from the most pure and most corrupt, which just seems weird to me, but okay, you do you. But Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him, at his wedding Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least ensure her safety. It didn't work. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe fire. Wally West, an amalgamation of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon, who accepted the power in order to help his uncle Blaze get Iris back. It's funny, because in a couple of days I'm going on vacation and I'm making it my mission to try to convince at least one person to sell me their soul. Like, it's not actually gonna work, but I think it's gonna be funny if I can do it. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, White Witch. First appearing in Doctor Strange Fate #1 from 1996, White Witch is a combination of Scarlet Witch and Zatanna. White Witch's origin is not completely known, but when she was introduced, she was acting as one of Doctor Strange Fate's aides. Fearing that access would divide the Amalgam universe back into its original 2 universes, Doctor Strange Fate decides to capture and exterminate him, so he has Mix mystically teleport his 3 agents into his sanctum, known as Arkham Tower. Strange Fate proceeded to explain to the 3 that Access was a greater threat than any of their previous foes, including Mephisatanus or Baron Wotan. Access managed to escape Skulk and Jade Nova by teleporting, but White Witch approached him from behind, pushed him to the ground, climbed on top of him, and with a kiss, he was knocked out. Then White Witch said that you shouldn't send a girl or a monster to do a woman's job. White Witch has all the powers of both Scarlet Witch and Zatanna, making it obvious why Doctor Strange Fate would want her as his aide. That's insane. And it can only be topped by 2 people. Penultimately in at number 2, Clark Kent. Super Soldier is fairly evidently the combination of Clark Kent and Steve Rogers, first being introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3 from 1996. During World War II, government scientists were working on a super soldier formula that would transform a man into much more, into some sort of human weapon using cellular samples from an alien corpse. Clark Kent volunteers for the Super Soldier program and they administer the formula, as well as a good chunk of solar radiation. This mixture gave Kent incredible abilities, including all of those of Captain America and Superman. Super strength, heat vision, flight, you name it. Now known as Super Soldier, Kent wields the Superman logo as his shield. In March of 1942, Super Soldier fought Ultra Metallo, a robot sent by Lex Luthor to aid Germany in winning the war by killing Clark. But the fight started in Washington, DC and ended above the northern Atlantic Ocean, when Clark sacrificed himself to take down the robot, sinking them both into the icy depths. Jimmy Olsen was one of the few witnesses and instead reported that Super Soldier had retired after America had declared that they won the war. 50 years later, the body was thawed out in JLA #4 and Clark joined the Judgment League Avengers as its leader. Finally, in at number 1, Dr. Strange Fate. Dr. Strange Fate is one of the most powerful beings on Earth 9602, being a combination of not only Dr. Strange and Dr. Fate, but Charles Xavier as well. While traveling through the Himalayas, Metamutant Charles Xavier was rescued by Nabu the Ancient One, who at the time was Lord Supreme of Order, which is a pretty damn impressive sounding title to say the least. Taught the mysteries of the supernatural world by Nabu, Charles taps into the energies and forces of both telepathic and mystical, making the Metamutant Sorcerer one of the most powerful beings in the Amalgam universe. Since he was already a powerful telepath, Charles quickly surpasses his teacher and was promoted to the new Lord Supreme of Order. Dr. Strange Fate was also one of the founding members of the Judgment League Avengers, and began pursuing threats in shadowy realms, leaving the protection of Earth to, you know, lesser beings.